Hi, my name is Zach Simmons, and this is Pro Football Today. Free agency is upon us. The league year just started yesterday. Um, Saw a lot of big deals throughout the last couple days. There's two deals that I want to talk about today. There's a third major one that I'll talk about in my other show, Chicago Bears Journal. But two big moves, one of them being a trade, one of them being a free agent signing. So we probably know exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. DeAndre Hopkins leaving Houston, shocking the world, being traded to the Arizona Cardinals. And then, of course, Tom Brady moving away from New England. A lot of people thought he was going to stay. I had a feeling he wasn't. I had chose the Chargers. He ended up going to Tampa Bay. So first, let's talk about this trade a little bit. So Houston trades their best receiver of all time. Very short era of a franchise, but you can definitely say DeAndre Hopkins is better than Andre Johnson. So these were his stats this year: 1,165 yards, 7 touchdowns. A little bit on the lower end compared to last season. Last season, though, was a fantastic season from him. Last season, 1,572 yards and 12 touchdowns. Last year was just such an incredible year. This year, he dropped a lot more passes. It's something he's not known for, is dropping passes, but it happened this year. Hopkins has been fantastic. He's been in the league for 7 years. Five of his 7 years, he has been an 1,000-yard receiver. To put that into perspective, Arizona in the same amount of time, 7 years, has had an 1,000-yard season. Has had an 1,000-yard receiver 4 times out of 7, one less time than Hopkins. All 4 of those times were with Carson Palmer starting at quarterback. You also had Drew Stanton in there a little bit. You also had Ryan Lindley a little bit, and of course Blaine Gabbert in 2017. The last time they had an 1,000-yard receiver was Fitzgerald in 2017 with Carson Palmer and Blaine Gabbert. He finished with roughly 1,150 yards, 3 touchdowns. So this is a very much needed asset. They needed another receiver. Fitzgerald's pretty much done. This may be his last season. They needed someone who can continue on. Because Christian Kirk, you can't have Christian Kirk as your receiver one. You have to have someone else there. So very good job by Arizona, and basically giving the Texans dirt. I mean, this was a very cheap trade. Definitely taking a look at the Stephon Diggs to Buffalo. They were able to get a first-round pick. Houston was able to get a second-round pick and David Johnson. Which, let's take a look at David Johnson, for instance. David Johnson, this last year, he didn't play every game. He was in 13 games this season. 13 games. 345 yards. 2 touchdowns. Now, you also had Chase Edmonds in there. I mean, David Johnson was hurt for a lot of those games. Even though he played in some of those games, doesn't mean that he played the entire game. Chase Edmonds had a couple of really good games, and of course, Kenyon Drake had some really good games. So to put that into perspective, Houston had Carlos Hyde. They have not brought Hyde back. They do have Lamar Miller. He was out with an ACL injury all year. Got injured back in preseason. So they picked up Hyde. Hyde ended up with 1,070 yards, 6 touchdowns, played all 16 games. So I know Johnson's been hurt. I get David Johnson's been hurt. Why wouldn't you just go for Carlos Hyde? I mean, why can't you just pick up Carlos Hyde again? I mean, Hyde looks so good. Probably his best season. And also considering he didn't get hurt. A lot of times it's his thing. That was his thing back in San Fran. He kept getting hurt. Hyde looked great in Cleveland. Got shunned a little bit in Jacksonville. Looked amazing in Houston. And he just can't catch a break. Why would you trade for David Johnson? There's definitely... The thing is, it's DeAndre Hopkins. I get, if you want to trade DeAndre Hopkins, that's fine. I know there's a lot of things going on. He felt disrespected. He wanted to get a large deal. Houston didn't want to give him that large deal. He threatened to hold out, and Houston said, "We'll just trade you instead." That's fine. If you want to trade DeAndre Hopkins, that's fine. Do what you will. I mean, Antonio Brown got a first-round pick. But then you trade him for David Johnson in a second. It just doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you trade for someone else? Anyone would take DeAndre Hopkins. There's so many teams that need a receiver. And there's a lot of receivers in the draft. It's a gamble. You don't know exactly which receivers are going to work. Las Vegas would have taken Hopkins. Many other people. Minnesota. Hey, Minnesota could have taken Hopkins. Trade away Stephon Diggs, get Hopkins. Packers could have used DeAndre Hopkins. There's all these teams that really could have used DeAndre Hopkins and probably would have been willing to part with a first-round pick. Instead, they trade Hopkins to the Cardinals in exchange for David Johnson. Now, it doesn't take a genius to know this is not a good trade. Not a good trade whatsoever. Definitely for a team that doesn't have a first-round pick. Remember, they traded their first-round pick to Miami in exchange for Kenny Stills. Finished with just around 500 yards. Did decent. Definitely helped out Will Fuller. Will Fuller had his best season this year. But both of them aren't receiver number ones. Traded for Tunzel. And Stills traded a couple first-round picks. So for a team that doesn't have a first-round pick, why in the world would you trade for a second when there's a handful of teams that would easily have taken DeAndre Hopkins for a first-round pick, including the Buffalo Bills? Instead of getting Stephon Diggs, they could have gotten DeAndre Hopkins and parted with the first-round pick, maybe a little bit more, because Hopkins definitely better than Stephon Diggs. Probably could have gotten more out of Hopkins than they did for Diggs. So, it's just an awful trade. We all know it is plain enough to see, and it's one of those things. It's another reminder that not every head coach can be GM. Just because Bill Belichick can do it does not mean every coach can do it. But they're going to have a tough time. Poor Deshaun Watson. The guy's a good quarterback. You can't say, well, DeAndre Hopkins made him. You can't say that. Hopkins had a very good career without Watson. Had a good career, good start with Matt Schaub, did well with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Case Keenum, and then of course Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer were in the mix. So I mean, he had good seasons before Deshaun Watson. So why we talk so much about Deshaun Watson? It's not because DeAndre Hopkins made him. If that's the case, then we should be talking a whole lot about Ryan Mallett and Brian Hoyer. That, oh my goodness, Hopkins made them. Made them look great. The reason we talk so much about Deshaun Watson isn't because of Hopkins. The reason we talk about Deshaun Watson is because Deshaun Watson is such a good quarterback. He has Hopkins, but he also did a whole lot more. He was able to run, able to make defenses look silly. And then Will Fuller and Kenny Stills were good assets for him. The big problem is with Houston, you don't have a receiver one. You can't do it. You traded away DeAndre Hopkins and you brought in Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb is a good, solid receiver. I like him, but he's not what he used to be in Green Bay. He's a good receiver for a young quarterback. So he'll be good for Deshaun Watson, but not as good as DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, Watson will take a nosedive. And it's not because, he's not a good quarterback. It's not because DeAndre Hopkins is making them look good. It's DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, you lose such a good receiver. Of course your quarterback's going to take a nosedive. So, for all your fantasy owners, Deshaun Watson, keep an eye on him. But without those receivers, you have to have someone to help out your quarterback. Not only that, but you also need a running game to help out your quarterback. And let's be honest, David Johnson can't do that. You're going to be relying so much on Lamar Miller, who's a very good quarterback. I think it is a good running back. But Carlos Hyde, I think, is better. Duke Johnson is still there. So this just doesn't make any sense. Lamar Miller is still there. Duke Johnson is there. Why in the world do you bring in David Johnson? It just doesn't make any sense. For a guy who's he did okay last year. This year, he did not look good. So I don't really need to go too much into that. We all know, terrible trade. Houston needs to hire a GM fast. Bill O'Brien's a decent head coach. It's not phenomenal, But man, if you're not going to get a GM, can you at least have like your offensive coordinator take over the GM spot instead of Bill O'Brien? This isn't working. Just find someone on the street to take care of the GM job. Heck, hire me. I could probably be a better GM than Bill O'Brien. I wouldn't have traded DeAndre Hopkins for a second round pick and David Johnson. They need to do something. They need to do something fast. I don't want to say you have to fire Bill O'Brien because the guy has been a decent head coach. Yes, he's not doing as good of a job as Gary Kubiak, but the guy's doing a pretty decent job as head coach. He's making it to the playoffs. But they need to find a GM now. You gotta find one quick, especially after this. Damage has been done. Go find a GM to fix this mess. So that's all I got when it comes to Hopkins trade. Great trade for Arizona. You got a really good receiver. He's done great things with other quarterbacks. So if he can do great things under Brian Hoyer and Ryan Mallett, why in the world can he not do that with Kyler Murray, who's we can definitely agree, is a better quarterback than those two, than Mallett and Hoyer. So, good trade for Arizona. Terrible trade for Houston. So let's talk Bucs. Let's talk Brady. So we all knew it was going to be between the Bucs and the Chargers. Didn't know exactly who was going to win out. Apparently he chose the Bucs because one of his sons lives on the East Coast. So he wanted to stay close instead of going on the opposite side of the country. So he chooses Tampa. And I got to be honest, I know I picked him to go to the Chargers. Tampa makes a lot more sense. Tampa makes a lot more sense. You have an established offense with a good offensive-minded coach in Bruce Arians. I mean, this guy made Jameis Winston look good besides the 30 picks. Winston finished with 5,000 yards. In fact, this last season for Winston, even though he threw all those picks, should have been kind of a wake-up call to other teams saying, this guy might be able to do something. Excuse me. He just needs to not throw those 30 passes. Before this year, Jameis should be gone. Jameis should easily be gone. After this year, though, I'm thinking, he might actually be kind of decent. 5,000 yards, forget about the 30 picks. He also threw for 30 touchdowns. Maybe there could be something there. But they decided to go after Brady, and I think Brady's going to have a lot of fun there. You got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You have a couple decent tight ends. O.J. Howard probably isn't worthy of the first-round pick. But he's been decent. Karen Brate, though, very good tight end. This defense has looked better. This can be a playoff team. Now, I'm not going to go so far as to say this is a Super Bowl caliber team. Just because you have an electric offense doesn't mean you're going to make it. I'm a firm believer in defenses win championships. But they're definitely going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now, will Brady do as good as Jameis? He's not going to get as many yards. I don't think he's going to get 5,000 yards. He doesn't push the ball down the field. He hasn't done that. Didn't do that with Brandon Cooks, which was very surprising. Last time he really did that was with Randy Moss, which was quite a ways back. He doesn't launch the ball. He did a little bit this season with Philip Dorsett. But with the way these receivers go, he doesn't have Edelman. He doesn't have someone to go underneath. So you might see him push the ball a bit more because he doesn't have that reliable target who's going to be in the middle of the field at all times like Julian Edelman. But Brate is going to have a year. Brady's going to have a year, and this is going to be interesting. They don't have a run game. With Brady, you have to have a run game. You have to have running backs that have the ability to be a good pass catcher. That's how Brady Brady's done a very good job with that in New England, mainly with James White. He's done a very good job with James White. So you could say, well, they need to go out there and grab someone, maybe Melvin Gordon. They have to go and grab someone to be that electric pass catcher. But I think they already have him. I think they already have him, Ronald Jones. I think Ronald Jones could be that. He showed some signs of that this last season. Surprised Bruce Arians, and Arians even said, maybe we need to pass the ball to this guy a little bit more often. So if you're a fantasy owner, watch Ronald Jones. It's going to be someone you need to watch. If he's able to catch the ball, Brady's going to be looking his way no matter what. It doesn't matter what he's doing. Brady's going to look his way. All he has to do, grab the ball, and see what, after that, open field. See what you can do. So, Ronald Jones very well could be a good running back for Tampa. Maybe not necessarily when it comes to running the ball, but when it comes to receiving. Ronald Jones might be a huge asset. But don't be surprised if they pick someone up. Carlos Hyde is still out there. Melvin Gordon is still out there. They can draft a running back too. So expect them to kind of up the running game a little bit. But I think the running game, at least when it comes to receiving, Ronald Jones can be a huge asset. They do need someone to run the ball. Him and Peyton Barber have struggled with that. That could be also when it comes to offensive line. They need to address some of the stuff there, but for the most part, this is going to be a very good offense. Move some things in the defense, fix some things up. This can be a very good team. I'm not saying Super Bowl contender just yet. Playoff team for sure. With how bad the NFC South was, who knows? They might be able to take out the Saints. Very good possibility. I think they'll definitely take over Carolina and Atlanta, probably so as well. This is going to be one good team, but this is one tough division. You never know what's going to happen. It's either all these teams are down, or sometimes suspended. All these teams are very, very good. So we'll see exactly what happens here with Tampa. But I'm hesitant to say Super Bowl contender. I'm hesitant to say that. But this is going to be one very good offense. We can at least say that with Tom Brady in there. He's not going to throw as many turnovers as Jameis Winston. And the reason the Bucs could not win games last season is because of Jameis's pick sixes. Otherwise, the team was very good. Team should have made the playoffs, especially when you have a guy throwing for 5,000 yards. You should be making the playoffs, but it's those turnovers that killed him. And that's the story of Jameis Winston right there. He looked overall very good except for those 30 throws. 30 terrible throws cost him the season. But Brady should be better than Winston. I don't think Brady's going to put up 5,000 yards. He might not even put up as many touchdowns. He could put up around 30. But what's going to help him is you're not going to see those 30 picks. You might see maybe 10. With the receivers that he has now, he doesn't have those in New England. Never really had this kind of receiving core in New England at all. So the fact that he could throw barely any picks with an okay receiving core, he should be just fine. There's no way he's going to throw any picks. He can throw bad throws all day long, and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans should be able to do something. If not catch, at least deflect it away from the defender, making it a harder catch for a cornerback or linebacker. But Tom Brady, very good signing by Tampa. Not going to say Super Bowl contender, but could be a very, very good team. We'll see what happens this year in 2020. But for the Patriots, expect them to go Stidham. I'm not expecting to go anyone else. Heck, they could go Jameis. But I'm expecting them to go Stidham. He knows the system. You have to have someone. When it comes to Bill Belichick, you have to have someone who knows the system, who will put everyone above himself, and will do what he's told. Stidham's already been in the system before. They've given him a lot of reps, gave him a bunch of reps in preseason, and they also gave him a good amount of first-team reps throughout the season because Brady had to take a seat about once or twice a week. He would rest, then gave Stidham some time, some practice to be a starter for the New England Patriots. It's as if Belichick knew this was going to happen all along. So expect Jarrett Stidham to be the starting quarterback for New England. I don't expect them to trade for anyone. The only person I expect them to trade maybe for is Andy Dalton. Dalton's going to have to go someplace. So that's a definite possibility. They could draft someone, but I'm expecting Jarrett Stidham to be the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots in 2020. So that's what I have for this week of Pro Football Today. Next week, I'll go through my 3 winners and 3 losers of free agency. And I got to tell you, those Bucs, they look high up there. And those Texans, well, you know what? Unless something drastic happens, we might know exactly where they're going to be at. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe. If you have any comments, any disagreements, please put those in there. I don't care if you agree with me whatsoever. You can disagree with what I'm saying. Put it in the comments. I love seeing what you guys say. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day.